Hi and welcome or welcome back to The Books Are Everywhere. Today I am here with my September wrap up. We're a little late, but you know, I still want to do this wrap up and try and get my head set into remembering what I've actually read recently, because I feel like a lot of stuff is falling out of my head, but that is okay. We are going to try and talk about the books I read in September. I read 8 books in September, which is less than I thought I had, and it's not my best, but it's fine. I did have my trip to the US in September, which I knew I wasn't going to read as much while I was there, and obviously I had the jet lag and things like that, so I'm not going to hold it against myself too much that I only read 8 books in September. I'm also carrying a few books over from September into October, so that's 2 books, one of them being The Extraordinaries by TJ Klune, which I was meant to finish at the end of September, and I was buddy reading it with Alex. However, I hadn't finished it by the time we went to America, and I left my copy in Mark's car when we went to America, and I forgot it was there, and I didn't bring it home with me. I haven't seen him since we got back, so I haven't retrieved my copy yet, so I need to carry that on into the next month, which is fine. I will finish it very shortly. And then I've also got Dracula, which I am further than this into. I have switched to listening to the audiobook of this actually on Spotify on a podcast, which I am enjoying so far. I don't know where I am. I think maybe chapter 12 or 13. I am enjoying this. It's very atmospheric and I'm enjoying the act of listening to it, but it's very thick and there's a lot of different characters, and it's from quite a lot of different viewpoints because it's different people's diaries, which I find very interesting, but I know it's not necessarily what I expected, and I feel like we've very much gone from the classic Dracula kind of setting at the start. I think I'm about there, maybe. About a third of the way through. Not 100% sure, and I spilled tea on this book this morning, which is not great, but it's fine. But yeah, about that, and I'm going to continue listening to the audiobook of that one throughout October. Hopefully I will get it wrapped up within the month because it is a chunky book. But anyway, on to the books I actually managed to start and finish in September, or just finish in September in the case of one of these. The first one I started and finished in the month of September was You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight by Kaylin Bayron, which is a fairly new YA horror release, and this one was the perfect one to kick off this kind of season, this autumnal season. I really enjoyed this. It was interesting to read. It's a kind of slasher. It's following the final girl in this, all I'm thinking of is the Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix, and that is confusing me. This is a different book. I haven't even read that book. This one is following, I can't even remember her name, and there is no information about a blurb on this book at all because it's a proof copy. There we go, it's inside. It's following Charity. She has this summer job at this camp which is called Camp Mirror Lake, which is an old camp that's been turned into a a full contact terror game, which we have them here. I know there's some in the US that's Fright Nights and things around this time of year, and it's kind of similar to that, but it's full body contact and based on horror films. So it's based on a specific slasher film which is called The Curse of Camp Mirror Lake, but then some of her co-workers start ending up dead. Things go on from there. This one, I did enjoy it. I read it in a day, and I did a live show on Amy McCaw's channel, which was so much fun to do, and I'm glad I read it in the day because it was very fresh in my mind when we did the live show, so that worked out quite well for me. But this one was it veered into supernatural, paranormal, magical realism territory, and I didn't expect it to. And it was quite grounded at the start of the book. It was very fun, fast-paced, which I really enjoyed. But then it went to being quite odd, and I could have done without part of the book. I think I would have enjoyed it more if it was just that slasher element, that realistic horror element, where it would have just been I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil the book, but I think it's probably best going with these expectations that it is not necessarily just your classic slasher. It's not someone running around with a mask on, like there is more to it, and that does veer into like paranormal side of things. So I didn't really expect that and didn't really need it from the book. So I think I gave this one 3 or 3.5 stars out of 5. It was fun, it was quick. There was a lot that I liked about it, but I could have done without some things, and that was kind of our consensus on the live show, to be honest. I think all of us said quite similar. I went from reading that one to reading Somewhere I Turn Pretty by Jenny Han, which I picked up completely on a whim. I wanted to read this so badly because I have been watching the show, and I watched the show like throughout the summer, and I really loved it. I don't know why, there was just something so like comforting and nostalgia about this. I didn't really expect to love this, and this has been on my radar for years and years, and I did read To All the Boys I Loved Before years and years ago, and I didn't really enjoy it all that much. And then I watched the films, loved the films, and went back and read the books, and actually ended up really enjoying the books. So I think this time I've kind of purposely watched the show, love the show. I think it's a brilliant adaptation, even though it's done by Amazon, not Netflix. The To All the Boys films are done by Netflix. And then I've gone and read the books. And that worked for me because reading this book was like rewatching the show and a little bit more, because they are so similar, and I love the way they've kept a lot of the kind of beats of the plot similar throughout the show when they've adapted it from the books, and it just felt so comforting. This is following Belly, who has gone to the same place in Cousins every year. She's gone to this beach house which is owned by her mom's friend Beck, or Susanna Beck, and she goes every year with her family, and Susanna has these 2 sons, these 2 boys, Conrad and Jeremiah, and she's grown up being friends with them. And then this particular summer, as she's getting older, I think she's 15, 16 in the start of these books, she has had a crush on Conrad her entire life, but both of the boys start to see her this summer, which is hence the title, which I do not like the title of this book at all, but it exists. But yeah, I just, like, I felt like it would always be too young for me now, and it is, obviously it's very teen drama, but it's just so much, like, it's so fun and it's so comforting and so wholesome in a way, and it does have some kind of deeper emotional stuff going on in here as well. But also, like, the show is so good. The show is so good. I just really love it. Genuinely made me emotional, the show. And the music is brilliant too. I know that this is an advert for the show and not the book, but honestly, go watch it. Like, there's not a lot that I'll say the movie was better or the show was better, but in a lot of Jenny Han's cases, I just think they translate so well to screen, and this is no different. So I really enjoyed reading this. I don't know if I've really rated it, probably say 4 out of 5 stars, but yeah, I did really love reading that. Just the experience was so enjoyable. I then went on to Loath to Love You by Ali Hazelwood. I had honestly forgotten that I picked this up until I looked at my Goodreads to check what I had read in September, and I read this, apparently. I had already read the first story, which was Under One Roof, and I was in such a mood for romance, and I just wanted easy to read books. And I decided to pick up the other 2 stories in here, which was Stuck on You, I think it's called. Let me check. Stuck with You and Below Zero. These are in the Steminist kind of collection that she writes. I mean, I know a lot of her books are very similar, but these are both following sciencey situations. Let's just see what it says, because they have a very brief synopsis in the start. These are following Mara, Sadie and Hannah, who are all friends. So Under One Roof is following one of them, it doesn't say which. And then Stuck With You is following another friend, and Below Zero is following another, and there is like a bit at the end where they're all like together, which is very sweet. And they do mention each other in the stories, which I really like. So Stuck With You is following a civil engineer and her nemesis, who are taking their rivalry and love to the next level when they get stuck in a New York elevator. And Below Zero is following a NASA aerospace engineer as she is injured and stranded at a remote Arctic research station, and the only person willing to undertake the dangerous rescue mission is her longtime rival. I really enjoyed both of these. I actually liked Stuck With You a lot more than I expected. I didn't know if it would kind of trigger my claustrophobia with it being set in a lift, because I don't like lifts at all, like elevators. I don't really get in them if I can help it, because I'm claustrophobic and I get worried about getting stuck in one, even though I never have. So reading a story about getting stuck in one, I did wonder how that would go down with me, but it actually mainly follows them before and in the run up to that, and when they had this like one night stand type thing before. So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good, and I really liked the development of their relationship. Below Zero I did enjoy, just not quite as much, I would say, but these were fun, easy, very enjoyable, exactly what I expected and wanted, and I go into Ali Hazelwood's books expecting that and always really enjoying them. I'd say this is probably like a 4.5 star. I think both of Ali Hazelwood's full-length novels have been 5 stars for me that I've read so far. I haven't read Love Theoretically, but I've read Love on the Brain and I've read The Love Hypothesis. Are they both right? I think those are the right titles. Yeah, and I will continue to read anything that she writes because I really enjoy her writing, and that was exactly what I needed at the time. I then went to the States and I read The Witch is Back on my Kindle by Sophie H. Morgan. And this one was a Mills and Boon romance, and it was following a witch. I cannot remember any of their names, but it's following a witch who is running this like bar with her human friends, and it's following her as somebody comes back into her life. An ex-boyfriend or ex-fiance comes back into her life years and years later, and in their early 20s they were contracted, it's the right word, to be married, and they had this actual contract that they needed to uphold, which is a thing in this book in the witch circles. And they decided, well, they didn't decide not to get married. He ran away and left a note and just disappeared. So she doesn't know why that happened, and then he comes back into her life years and years later and is kind of demanding that they get married again, because it turns out if they don't withhold that contractual agreement and go ahead with the marriage, bad things start to happen to people in their families, and that is what started to happen. So he needs her help to stop that from happening, and obviously there is still kind of like a spark between them, and some chemistry between them, and it goes from there. And this one was really enjoyable. It had some really heartfelt moments as well, with kind of family relationships or found family and friendships that I really enjoyed. It was very easy to read. It was great to read on the flight to and from, or to America, and while I was there I did finish it while I was there, and it was nothing amazing. It was quite predictable, and the plot beats were quite similar to other books, and I find that it will probably take a lot for one of these kind of witchy romances to stand out for me, because they do always feel quite similar and quite predictable. But it was fun, it was romantic, it was spicy in places, and yeah, it was what I expected and wanted from the book, which I did appreciate. And it was very tropey as well. The proof copy that I had, which my brother's girlfriend now has, actually had all the tropes on the back, which was quite clever. But yeah, I did enjoy it. I would say 3.5 out of 5 stars for that one as well. But I then went on to read The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangi Mandana, and I really, really love this book. It is again following a witch, but it's a very different story. It's set in the UK. So cozy and so wholesome, and it's following this witch who is part of this society of irregular witches, and she is posting on social media about how she's a witch, but people don't know that witches exist, so she's kind of pretending to be a witch, but she's pretending to be a human pretending to be a witch. And she is tracked down by this kind of found family. They all live in this big house. There's a librarian, there's a gardener, there's a housekeeper, and there is 3 young orphaned witches, and they are orphaned and they need somebody to be able to teach them magic. So she is kind of tracked down using this social media thing that she's created, to go and tutor these young witches, but the people in the house are, the adults in the house are hiding things, and she is trying to figure them out. They're trying to figure her out. There's a romance that sparks with one of the people who live in this house, and it's just so heartwarming and so wholesome, and so it's the kind of book that makes you want to read. And that's what I love about it, and it definitely will be one of my favourite books of the year, because finding a book like that for me is so special and reminds me why I love reading. And I just wanted to read it. It was perfect for the holiday because on the flight back I read a lot of it, and while we were there I read a lot, and it just felt like I was being wrapped in a cosy blanket, and it's perfect for this time of year. I will find myself a hardback version because I loved it so much. And if you like The House in the Cerulean Sea, it's perfect for you, which I feel like I've heard many a time, so I knew I would really enjoy this one, but I'm glad I enjoyed it as much as I expected to. That one got 5 out of 5 stars, you probably won't be surprised to hear. The penultimate book I read, or I finished, in September was Strange the Dreamer by Lady Taylor, and I had honestly also forgotten that I'd read this one because most of this book went straight over my head, which I am really sad to say because I really wanted to love this. I have this beautiful edition that I paid not an insignificant amount of money for. I've heard such good things about this book, and is it signed? I think it's signed as well. And I just, honestly, just a lot of it went over my head. I did read it on audio, so I think maybe that's part of the problem. And I know I say it a lot, but I just need to be more careful with what I'm reading on audio sometimes. But this is such a big book, I didn't know how else I would get through it. And I wasn't really in the mood to read fantasy, so I decided to listen to it instead, because I just find that more approachable for me. I am going to read you some of the synopsis because even though I've read this so recently, as I said, not a lot of it's really stayed in my head. It's set following Laszlo Strange, who is a war orphan and a junior librarian, and he's always feared that his dream chose poorly. Since he was 5 years old, he's been obsessed with the mythic lost city of Weep, but it would take someone bolder than he to cross half the world in search of it. Then a stunning opportunity presents itself in the person of a hero called the Godslayer and a band of legendary warriors. He has to seize his chance or lose his dream forever. What happened in Weep 200 years ago to cut it off from the rest of the world? What exactly did the Godslayer slay that went by the name of God? And what is the mysterious problem he now seeks help in solving? The answers wait in Weep, but so do more mysteries, including the blue-skinned goddess who appears in Laszlo's dreams. How did he dream her before he knew she existed? And if all the gods are dead, why does she seem so real? I feel like the synopsis gives you quite a good idea of what this book reads like. It's incredibly poetic and can be quite difficult to follow, and I feel like in some ways maybe that's just the vibe of the book, that it is this kind of fantasy that feels very whimsical. It feels incredibly atmospheric, which is probably my favourite part of the book, was just how atmospheric it felt. I really love that about the book, and when I was listening to it I did feel the book, if that makes sense. I felt like I was in it. I really like that about it. Some of the scenes, especially the ones between Laszlo and this blue-skinned goddess, I really enjoyed it. I can't even remember her name. But I really enjoyed those scenes. I really felt like I was captivated with the story in those scenes, and I really liked this idea of Weep, but honestly, most of it just gone. Just completely gone. I would like to carry on with this series. It is only a duology, so I do have Muse of Nightmares as well, and I'm wondering whether I should try and read Muse of Nightmares physically, see if that makes a difference. However, I don't know. I probably need to reread this before I read Muse of Nightmares, because I feel like it would probably go in more a second time, because evidently the first time we're not doing so great. But I went from that one to reading a very different book again, and I went back to this series and read It's Not Summer Without You by Jenny Han, which is the second book in The Summer I Turned Pretty, and I don't feel like I really have that much to add. A lot of my thoughts on The Summer I Turned Pretty are the same for this one, so I won't say too much about this, but it was lovely to be back in this world. I had a couple of days left of the month, and I was quite tired after the flying, getting home from the States, and I didn't know what I wanted to pick up, but I knew this one would be a very easy read and just nice for me to be in this kind of world again. And it was really comforting, it was really lovely. I don't really separate the books too much because they're just following on from the first one. And this one again was very similar to the show, and the way the show's adapted it is incredibly similar. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one as well. Probably 4 stars out of 5 again, I'd say. But I need to read the last one, and I'm going to wait for the matching cover to come out, so I have this entire set in the Amazon Prime TV show covers, which I actually quite like, these tie-in editions. I think they're quite nice, and I do prefer them to the old covers that we had in the UK. But I did see some really pretty covers in the US that I wanted, but I didn't get them. Anyway, enough about this. I did really enjoy it though. I'm just sorry I don't have more to add on the subject. But that is all of the 8 books I read in September. Hopefully I get to read more in October. I feel like I'm probably on track to read more in October so far, but we will see how the rest of the month goes. And I hope you enjoyed this video anyway, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.